For most of modern history, the most intelligent people were the ones that knew all the answers. And in turn, by having all the answers, it usually gifted them with the most power. But the reality is that answers are now abundant because we have the new notion of artificial intelligence, and what that's done is it's made people feel like they are intelligent even when they're not. And actually, that validity of what those answers are is not what it was many years ago because you trusted people in the past that brought intelligence because you knew they couldn't just surface this from anywhere. So the answer is now is it's not who's got the most answers, but it's the validity of those answers. And that's the differentiator. So judgment is clear here. What is the difference between where we're going with the way we think and the way that we actually communicate and the way that we act with our behaviors and the knowledge that we bring? And are we becoming lazy in terms of how we're using what we knew and what we used to graph for to create that sort of knowledge that we secured as our IP versus now just using AI to come up with quick answers? So answers are becoming cheap now. And I don't mean cheap now in terms of value. I mean cheap in terms of like readily available and that anybody can actually come up with these answers. Where the real value is now is judgment behind those answers. And that's what we should really focus on as a human race and as a society moving forward. So you think about it, it's very easy now to come up with a presentation, to write email memo notes, to draft emails, to write a note to your boss, even to think about what should we plan from sort of family meals for the family this week. And, some of those have got good use cases because it gives you quick and easy fixes. And the reality is there's low risk or low impact to what those answers that are given to you by AI might actually mean to your day-to-day life. Where you have to be more careful is if you're looking at something like a termination letter for an employee, or you're thinking about a legal contract. AI is extremely powerful now and convincing to be able to show you that it looks like it knows what it's talking about. But you have to remember that this is speed and it's cheap because it's not based on sound judgment. And judgment is the word that you really need to take out of this video because judgment is the only thing that separates us from artificial intelligence, because the artificial intelligence gives us content, but it doesn't give you that judgment and validity. So what does this mean for leadership? I mean, leadership is good when you can come up with fast and agile decisions. A lot of businesses and people and leaders like to feel like they're agile, like to think they can get to the answer and fix problems quickly. But the issue is that fixing problems quickly now, not doing it yourself with your own judgment and using AI, is 90% likely to not be the best answer that you could come up with. Taking your time around things like this can actually create a better answer and better solution in the long run. But it's so tempting now with all this readily available AI to just use that as an efficient and quick answer. When that wasn't available before, you had no choice. You had to sit on it, you had to think, you had to actually, compromise sometimes around what those answers might be. But with AI there, it's like seeing some candy or seeing a chocolate bar and just wanting to take a bite of it. If it's in front of you, you may do that. So leadership profiles will change. Leadership will always be about being agile and it'll be about being able to make decisions. But leadership will also become even more important around that ability to reflect and really put sound judgment and big picture thinking into any decisions you make. So the issue is not that AI is going to get smarter and better at what it does. The issue is because of that, what it's going to do is stop humans flexing the muscles that allow them to pass judgment. Sometimes having that situation where you have to reflect, where you have to think about your moral compass, where you have to go through disagreement, where you have to make mistakes and actually not take the first thing that comes up in your head, or you have to take advice from mentors or peers or whatever you've got access to in your network. That's how you get to the right answer. But it's very easy with AI now to actually allow us just to ask the question, and it comes back in such a well articulated way that makes it seem so convincing. And a lot of people stress test it, they look at it, they ask it to edit it slightly in the way they frame it. But the reality is none of that answer is coming from yourself, and you're not sitting there and taking time to reflect on that judgment. Now, in small cases and in one-off instances, this won't become an issue. But if this becomes your autopilot, that you always just use AI for every situation that you're faced with, you will lose that muscle in terms of how you separate yourself and your leadership skills. If you think about it when you go to the gym, if you don't use your muscles, if you don't continue running, if you don't do that aerobic exercise, you become unfit, you lose muscle mass. It's the same with your brain, it's the same with leadership, and it's the same with judgment. We owe society and the people that we serve in terms of our family, our friends, our colleagues, our subordinates, whatever it might be, to be able to take a pause and stop and use our moral compass and actually still reflect to get the decisions that we need to come to. So with this in mind, in the future, the people that will truly stand out are the ones that don't just give their life to machines to come up with all the answers for them. There is real hope for humanity because actually, where it may have been difficult to differentiate yourself when there was no AI, many people now will default to using this, and that gives you an opportunity to actually let your individuality, your judgment, your moral compass, as I said before, really shine through. Community, sense of belief, integrity, all of these things will stand the test of time. And this is something that I ask of you to lean into, because if you manage to do this correctly, you will stand out in a crowd because you're doing things in a different way. You know, pace is important, but not at the cost of accuracy or integrity. So slow down, we reflect, we think about our judgment, we think about how we would act in certain situations around lots of different circumstances. There's a lot of pressure now in terms of cost and performance to act quickly, and I can understand why it would be so easy to go down the trodden path of AI that lots of others are using. But find that balance to live with machines and AI in a way that helps you really think about how do you get the human and AI connection to be the most effective for you. Now, this will be different depending on which industry you work in as well, because you will be exposed to it in many different ways. But ultimately, it doesn't matter whether you're in technology, whether you're in professional services, when you're in a manual labor job, you're always making connections, you're always building relationships, and people will always want to speak to you and understand your judgment and opinion on things. So keep that IP to you. Don't put it into some algorithm. Make sure that you use that as your intellectual property that makes you unique and it allows you to be successful.